I hope you enjoyed all the parts of the documentary so far. This is the last part of the documentary. The impact of the Nation of Islam and the religion of Islam on the black community in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. First of all, I would like to start out with some footage of a television program that I produced in 1995, which in February of 1995. And it's an interview that includes uh, three brothers, citizens, got people that grew up in Winston-Salem along with myself, grew up in this community. And we're discussing how we made an attempt to separate from the United States. You know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught separation and independence. That is what he taught. And we attempted to separate. Now, at the time, there were many, but I'd just like to name a few, most of them. Rab Muhammad, Rahman Allah, Qayyum Allah, Akil Muhammad, and myself, Kareem Allah. 1975, we agreed that the best thing for us to do was to separate and leave America and go for self, following the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, the Razaks were a family of brothers. Now, the main three brothers that decided to separate, it was four of them. It was Asim Razak, Basir Razak, Akir Razak, and Rakib Razak. But the first three that left, Asim Razak, Basir Razak, and Akir Razak, they left with a brother that we knew out of Atlanta whose name was Suleiman Ali. And Suleiman was a brother that I met in Atlanta when I first moved to Atlanta. And I was very active in the temple. I was taking his children to school. I was taking my children to school. And I separated from participation in the temple activities because I had a disagreement with the captain about how much I should give up for selling the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. There was an FOI class, and in that class, all the brothers that were in that class would buy the papers, 100 papers, $50 a week. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught that the sellers of the paper would only have to pay a quarter per paper. So there was some disagreement between me and the captain because I wanted to keep my quarter after selling the papers. But I left with no hard feelings. I was able to keep my children in the school, and I continued to support them, but I didn't feel as though I was being treated fairly, but I wasn't going to hold myself a slave, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put it. So like I said, I left with no hard feelings. But in the process of leaving, I was able to meet a brother by the name of Suleiman Ali, and he gave me all the materials, all the lessons, and he also exposed me to everything that he had that the messenger taught, which included all of the old Muhammad Speaks newspapers, even to the point where Mr. Muhammad was writing in the Pittsburgh Courier. Brother Solomon was a library. He had a library. He had a personal library of all all the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he had been following the messenger's teachings for, I would say he started around maybe in the early 50s. And he was responsible for getting the temple in Newark, New Jersey, its first number. And there are many other stories that I could share with you, but I'm not going to share that with you because that's not about. He was not a citizen of Winston-Salem. He didn't grow up in the Winston-Salem community. But anyway, the Razak brothers left with Brother Suleiman. Now, I was supposed to have gone with them, but because I was with these other brothers, and we had a slight delay because of the opposition that was coming from their families. So there was a slight delay because remember, we all packed up with our families and we decided that we were going to separate. So now there was a lot of opposition coming from the families of those that I was with at the time. And so the Razak sent word for me to come on, and they didn't really want the others to come. They just sent word for me to come. So I felt as though it would not be right for me to just leave the people that had come to work with me on the idea of separation, the believers that I shared what I had with. And I just felt like it wouldn't be right for me to leave them. So I didn't. So what happened is the Razaks were very successful. They went to, they got on the journey and they ended up staying in Costa Rica for 11 years. And they purchased 125 acres of land. Whereas the brothers that I went with, we were not as successful. We ran out of money and we had to return. We were not that successful at all. So the footage of us on television, we're just talking about that. Okay. And in the next, after that footage, I will air the interviews with the Razaks, and they're going to talk about their journey and their travel and the things that they learned being away from the United States of America for 11 years.
Wake up! My name is Christina, and you are now watching AAP Magazine, active and inspiring people. Don't touch that remote. We'll be right back.
Now is always the right time with something positive in your mind. There's always someone to pull you down. You just get back up and hold your ground.
Country and from this way of life in 1975. And at that time, what we left here on basically was a deeply rooted faith in our God, His messenger, and what had been given to us, and in each other. And we went out of here with the greatest of intentions. It didn't work out exactly like we had initially planned, but we realized that we were not quite qualified. As our problem book teaches us, we had to have had a thorough knowledge of ourselves before we could return home to our native land and people. But we did honestly and sincerely make an attempt to separate ourselves, because we figured that after 440 years of the worst treatment that human beings have ever experienced, and realizing that the prophecies in the book of Genesis of the people who would be in bondage for 400 years and would be set free, so we decided to separate. And it was the will of Allah that we were not able to leave here. He had a greater plan for us. And it encompassed all of our people and not just a few of us. So that is the reason why we were not successful at that time. But we have never abandoned the idea, because we know that the divine solution between the problems that exist between the two people here in this country, black and white, is separation. It is the best
And we
and
must
only
have
solution.
our own.
Right. And
we must have our own.
And so we do
Got
seek,
to have
you know,
our
we
own.
seek a land and a country that we can call our own and live among righteous people. You know.
And one good aspect that did come out of us making that first attempt was the reality that the whole planet belongs to us. Allah has given us the whole planet Earth. And to be able to go in any part of it, most parts of it, like men of any nationality or men of means, and to travel in and out doing the business, taking care of the business that we set forth to take care of, was one benefit that did come out of the initial attempt. They let us know that we can travel to any part of the planet under the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, practicing those things that he told us would bring us success and be recognized and accepted by civilized people all over the planet Earth.
And that was equality.
Exactly.
That was the equality.
In your mind, I mean, what really said to you, I need to separate. I need to give this a shot.
Were the teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And understand the scripture, he blessed me to understand what I was studying. And he gave me the power of interpretation. I didn't have to look for it. And so I understood it. And what I know, understand, and it's the truth, I'm compelled to execute it. That's just been my life and my lifestyle. And so when I learned from Solomon, he told me, he said, look, after I finally got my letter ready from Chicago and everything, by the time they processed my letter, I already had the teachings and the lessons of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I knew my own personal identity. And when I went in the mosque in Atlanta, I went because of the instruction of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said we should report to the mosque. But Suleiman told me that the mosque was under control of the hypocrites at that time.
That's right.
And he said, let me tell you this, but you do what you decide to do. He said, if you go in there, the hypocrites are in charge. And if you're going to follow the teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you can't go in there and start turning things upside down that you don't have no knowledge of or control of. He said, now if Master Farah Muhammad, the Supreme Being, is alive and well, and Honorable Elijah Muhammad is alive and well, and they didn't stop it, then what makes you think you had a right to go in there and stop it? You either go in, submit, and do what they're doing, or if you go in there, then you got to see, and then you got to get out. And so I went to turn my letter in to submit to the program that he was talking about. He had already had run in with how they was controlling the flow of the labor of those people, brother, that was converting, in a sense, to Islam and coming. I mean, because when you hear these teachings, it's nothing else that can be in the forefront of your doing. It just make you drop the whole world of Satan. And so I did, and I met some good brothers. And one of the things I always was giving good guidance. One of the brothers, I don't remember his name, but he used to bring me eggs and fish. I used to buy the fish, because they had a workable program. And he told me, he said, look, brother, there's one thing that the messenger teaches us is that you have to look out for yourself and your family first. If you don't do that, then you're really not practicing the program. And so he told me, the first thing you do is make sure that your family get in the boat on this side of the river and get them on the other side where the security is. Don't put nobody else's family before yours, because if you take somebody else's family over there that's going to do a good deed, you might not be a good person that you're taking over there. And then you lost your family not knowing the difference between a good person and a bad person. And so that I practice it. when I went to that mosque that Sunday, Brother Rockman taught for a long time, very good teacher. But he always kept the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out front. And after he finished, he was telling the truth, because I had already read it. And I had to bear witness to it. I could just sit there like a dummy after truth be echoed like that. And so they had my wife sitting in the back, around 3/4 of the way back. And they put me right on the front. I was sitting right on the front, about the second seat, with Rock Martin looking down at me, and he was teaching. And he taught so hard that I sponged up everything that he said. I was tired. And then I went and I had a Muslim dinner for the first time, because when I first ate those butternut squash, I thought they were sweet potato. And the brothers kind of laughed a little bit, and they said, no, brothers, those are not sweet potatoes, that's butternut squash. That's when I first learned about butternut squash. And I made a contribution, because I think I wrote a check that time, a little bit more than what I usually write, because, I was able to do it. And after that, I continued communicating with Brother Kareem, and he introduced me to Suleiman. And I got my lesson, and he told me, he said, listen, brother, a wise man, whenever he get for himself, he get for his wife as well. He said, you get her the same lesson that you got, because you never know when you're going to be separated. And so if the devil come and grab you, then she will have her material. And so that's the way I used all of the money, ran all of the papers out at the print machine over Winston-Salem State, because I printed everything. I went and got, I had a bunch of dimes. And it printed and printed till the machine quit. And then, but I finished getting everything for the both of us. And at the point of the decision for me to leave the church to pursue the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I told my wife, I said, I don't know what really to say to you. If you want to, I want you to go to the mosque with me, but you don't have to. But if we can't make it from what I've been shown and got to do, then you can have everything, the house, the cars, everything. I just got to have my son. And then there was another time that I realized that the sisters, they be knowing more than you be knowing all along. So she told me, she said, well, baby, I didn't marry a religion. She said, I married you. Where you go, that's where I'm going. So that settled all of that. And so I can't speak to the challenge that a lot of brothers have, as they say that they couldn't get their woman to do this or do that. Well, I can only say what God did for me. And so that made me know that he has been with me all my life, defending and protecting me, because the only fights that I ever got in was because of defending somebody else's rights. And when I started studying the names, and the messenger said if I was doing anything about naming my children after the teaching, I wouldn't give them no devil's name. So to me, I understood that it said, since you're a Muslim, now you should give your children Muslim names. And so my son was named after me, but we changed that. He was about 2 years old. When I heard the teaching, I accepted, I put him in the Muhammad University of Islam, and I got some negative energies from some of the brothers that didn't understand, because, see, jealousy and envy is a powerful thing.
Ignorance.
Yeah, and ignorance as well. And so my son came across the grass coming to the car one day, and this brother was supposed to be a lieutenant or something. He started hollering at him. So I got out the car. And I said, brother, what's wrong? He going across that grass. I said, well, listen, he's a child. That's my child. You can't come at me like that. And that's all I said to the brother. And then I went to some of the programs, and I watched the children present. The children presented like I never heard anybody present before, with the math and the science. Talking about the new houses of the future, how they wouldn't even need dusters because of the solar system and that kind of stuff. Never heard nothing like that from sixth graders. And so I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And so it was further verifying that I was in the right camp. But I couldn't verify that these was all the right people that gonna be in the camp. But I did remember what he told me, you know, go look for yourself. Taught me about the energies. And so when I went in there, I saw the spirit of the people that represented and one that it didn't. So when I went down that aisle to go sit down to hear that first lecture, I read the spirit of the people in the mosque. Because I had been taught what to look for and what to do and what not to do. And so I followed that and I went in and out. And it was just an indication of practice that whenever you follow the way of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it wasn't always just like, you know, he was in charge of everything and everything was what to do around him all the time. But he still was on his mission, and Allah protected and guided him. And so I took the posture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The truth shall set you free. And so I wasn't afraid to deal with the truth. And so I was watching everybody. And as I was studying, I remember one morning I had looking for my holy name, because I got to that point I wanted my name. And so I had a list of the 99 names that the message had. And the one that we use now was number 18 on the list, Razak. And so Kyrene came here, told me, said, you know, study these names right here. And so when he came one morning, and I was at the point where I think it was the number 17th name, Wahab or something like that, dealing with the destroyer, because I was pissed off with the way things were. And then he came and he said, because at that time we were using the term God, right? He said, well, God, look at that name right there. And it was Razak. And so I studied the name, and the next time I saw him, I said, yeah, that's my name.
Well, the reason I did that, brother, is because you look in his pantry and you got all these canned foods and everything. You know, the brother's house looked like a provider. It was full of, you remember out there on the porch, Rakeem, had old layers of canned food. And so that just brought to my mind provisions. And I said, well, you need to look at that one, brother, because you're a provider.
You know, when he told me that, when you told him that, I looked back at my daddy's history.
Yeah.
Provider.
And you hit 100%, because Dad used to feed the whole family.
That's right.
But Mama had the biggest garden of any two people I ever seen for his small family. And I used to have to go out there and pick them butter beans and all that stuff till I got tired and pull squat. And then Mama spent all summer her and Daddy canning. And when you went in there, Mama had everything in them half-gallon jars, as far as you could look. Canned string beans, canned corn, canned tomatoes, soup, everything you name she had. And then Daddy always would kill 2 hogs every Thanksgiving. From the time I was old enough to know, he killed him 2 hogs. One year he killed 3 because the white man hog ate up his potatoes. And Daddy kept telling him to keep the hog out, so Daddy went and captured one of his pigs. And the man, Mr. Quick, said, keep the pig for payment. So that year Daddy killed 3. And my grandfather was the butcher that butchered every year. And Daddy had a smokehouse out back, up there where he was born at. I can take him to the place now. He had a smokehouse out back, not quite as big as this room. And all his meats was out there. He cured his own meat. He took at least 2 hams and had them smoked. And all them sausages and hams and shoulders and mittens was hanging in there. He had the hog head cheese, the pig feet, everything was already seasoned and hanging. And then around January, February, the family just come through because they'd be broke and they don't know no money. They just come through. And Daddy always had large stands of molasses. He had large stands of lard where they cooked them things, at the cracklings, the skins, and we couldn't eat it all. So Grandpa never come by. And my aunts and uncles would come by on Sundays, They said, we come to get groceries, and they come and they take stuff and go, and that's all winter. Daddy fed every one of them, and then the neighbors. But the one that took me off most on my dad, when he was working at the brickyard, and this man named Warren Moore, he had a bunch of girls. And Warren would get his paycheck and go to the lady's house and lay around drunk, and they would take his money, and then he'd come home on late Sunday night, broke to go back to work on Monday. And the lady didn't have nothing to feed the children, so Daddy would have to go and vouch for her at the country store to get food for the children. So Daddy started taking the money, because nobody was buck him. They couldn't whoop him. So when they got paid on Friday, Daddy went by him and 2 other black guys, take half of their checks, put it in an envelope. And when he come home, he stopped by and dropped that money off to those women so they'd have money to buy their children what they needed. And a lot of times Daddy would take them along with Mama to the store and stopped up the country store and went down to the A&P and the Colonial store. And that's when they learned how to shop with Mama at the Colonial store to buy, and the children start thriving because they'd have food, and Daddy was providing for those children then.
Yeah, that's the attribute there.
Yes, sir. So that's why when you said that, and me knowing this, I said, boy, I said that slug will hit that sucker right on the nose.
Costa Rica, your first choice?
No, Panama.
Okay, what changed your mind about Panama?
Well, Panama was in the Supreme Wisdom and Study Guide. It was talking about the Panama Canal Zone, how it was bought by a $1.75 stock, B stock, by it was paid for by us, the so-called black man, through trick knowledge of the slave master called Cavis. It's $375 million, I believe. And so we had to leave, and I foresaw that we needed to go down and get in a position where we could actually set up to be able to receive the believers of the messenger and the nation, because the messenger already told us that America gonna fall. And he said, come out of her, my people, be not partakers of her sin. And so we took it that literally as well as spiritually, because I never saw myself of going into the structure of hypocrites. If the messenger and the Savior done left, ain't no need to me really going in there and don't have no more than the teachings and the little prayers that I learned in the books. And so we went to Panama to invest. First we sent Brother Suleiman down. We flew him down there for 2 weeks, Basia and I, and we secured on his wife and house, bought everything that they needed, and he would report back to us in that 2-week period about what was happening. He went and made friends for us and found facilities for us to be able to come. And so we were to drive. We drove down through Central America with microbuses, they call them. A 68, 69, and 70 van. Ikea had one, I had one in Basia. And he taught us how to build the frames to carry those things that we needed to carry. We carried our supplies and those outdoor kind of equipment to cook the food and do what we need to do without having too much cost and going to stay in expensive hotels in different countries that we needed to. We did that, but the majority of the time we was on the road rolling, and he showed us how to do it. He even showed us how to go into restaurants and take money, even take a knot. Ikea was the secretary, and so he took a bunch of $1 bills, and then he wrapped them with a few 20s, and then put a few hundred, and that was our ticket to be able to get the people to see that we had some money. And then by him being trained out of Newark, New Jersey, in the street, he taught us all of the techniques of the street, especially handling money, to be able to do these things, because we were raised in the church with all the nickels and dimes and dollars. And I remember one restaurant we went in, our kid pulled that knot out, man, and had the hunter flipped around with a band on it. And the guy gave us the tab for the rest of it. He turned his back, and then he got out some 20s and stuff. And then he paid them, flipped back around. Them people, what they see first is what they think Americans are super rich. And so he trained us to go down, and we drove all the way through Central America. When we arrived in Panama, we needed somewhere to stay. We met a brother named Brother Henry. He was 47 years old at the time. airplane pilot. He trained, he was an instructor. He trained, yeah, he and a Chinese guy, I believe. They owned an air training school. And he was in the canal zone. And he had been looking for guys like us, undoubtedly. So when we came and made ourselves known with the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they took us right in. Then they started investigating us to find out who we really were, what y'all really doing here. We told him what the mission was, and he tried to help us to find a piece of land that we could buy, but we didn't have the finance to purchase land. And so that morning, he had made arrangement through his doctor, who was the same doctor for the president, Lacus of Panama. Omar Terrejo was a leading journalist at that time, and his schoolmate in the early 6th and 7th grade years, she helped him to get his grades, and so she knew in person. She's translated for us. And so we didn't, only thing that I had at that particular time for money, I used to sell those earrings from Estelle Jewelers. I had a big case of them that they locked in Honduras to travel through Central America, and if you took that lock off, then they would confiscate them because they would say you were trying to contraband. And so we took them all the way into Panama, and when we hooked up with Lolita, we made an agreement with her, 30% contract. Any of our products that she sold, she get 30%, and she still could sell all of her stuff. And so we would line up fiestas and ferias all over Panama during that season, and we would go and set up. And we built our own booth, which was portable, and we had 200-watt bulbs with black background, and the booth was canary yellow, real bright yellow. So that attracted everybody, and the juries and fantasia that we had was different than anybody else's because we were bringing it out of New York. And so she had first choice of all of the money. And so we did quite well. She got a good experience, and we did too. And she taught us that Basia would be on one corner and I was on the other. And we watched everybody hand that touched anything on that table. So we had, this nation practices. And our discipline. And we had one dude to pick up $1.98 necklace or something. She jumped over the counter and went and grabbed him and told him if he didn't get it back, she was gonna put him in jail. So he brought that back. So we didn't lose nothing. But we took care of her, fulfilled our obligation, and we had bought another location right beside hers down in Sasapoye where she was vending. When we got ready to leave, we gave that to her for her services and, befriending us and helping us. And we had to leave Panama because it was too militant. They said with the program that you got, these were some of the wisest black brothers in the country. They was like undercover agents. And they took us and blindfolded us and took us, and we was in a setting in a apartment similar to this. We didn't know where we were at. Because they said that we couldn't know it. That was their hideout place from their own government. Because the black folks, they did what they did for their government, but they knew there was corruption and a lot of controlling from American side of that thing. And so they told us, look, y'all need to go to Costa Rica. It's next door. They don't have guns up there. They speak English up there. And that would give you the kind of chance you want to develop the program that you're talking about here. Once y'all get it developed that, then we can reconnect. And so we sent Brother Norman up to investigate Limon, which was the Atlantic side of the country, Puerto Limon being the door or the port. And he came back with a report and made some arrangements. So by the time we got there, we would have apartments that we could I don't think we had bought the house yet. I mean the farm yet.
So you had a place to stay once you got in Puerto Limon.
Yeah, Brother Latif went up there. And so we moved, got there.
Well, we ran out of money in Panama.
Yeah.
And these brothers that he was talking about, we met. And them brothers put us up in their homes.
Yeah, that's right. So they.
That's very significant in our life, bro. They put us up in their homes, bro.
And gave us keys to them.
In Panama.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And fed us, sheltered us, gave us the keys to his car, brother, that we could go where we wanted to. You know, only Allah had to be in charge of that, bro.
And another incident was that they wanted those vans that we had because they was unique and different. The government took the vans.
Sure did.
And we protested them.
Right.
We get up every morning, put our bow ties on, and go down and sit on this step. We did it for a month, I believe. Before they gave in, the people made them give us our vans. And when we took
Well, what was their justification in taking the van?
We were trying to sell the van to get money.
Right.
Okay. But there was a law that said because they had American tags on it.
Right.
That you could not sell.
American.
You know, you couldn't sell a vehicle there without a Panamanian tag on it. Any
Okay.
other vehicle, you know, you had to go through a process.
Right.
And the process that we did, we tried to sell them, then they came and confiscated them. Okay? And they took them down there to the office of Hacienda, the place down there where they take them, and parked them all down there. And when we go downtown riding the bus, we go right past them every day or whatever, and you can see them. But the blessing in that was that Brother Henry,
Right.
the brother that we first met down there, then he went to sleep. He worked at the fire department in the canal zone. And he went to sleep while reading a message to the black man. And while he was sleeping on his stomach, a disc slipped in his back. And so he became really disabled almost. He had to have an operation. And during that time, after the operation, while he was healing, he couldn't work. So he spent the time with us, traveling with us throughout the city, and showing us different places and different people, man. And, you know, it's unbelievable. We learn about that government. And just by the time he was getting healed, then our case came to court about the vans. And they say usually when the police, the government takes something like that, you don't get it back.
You don't get it back.
You don't never get it back. They put official use on it and start using it.
Right.
But we went to court. And the day we went to court, the regular judge that was supposed to be there wasn't there. She was out for some reason. And there was a black lady there in the judge. Couldn't speak English. But brother knew her. And he deliberated our case. They gave us our vans back because there was technicality in the law how they took them.
Right.
And they gave us our vans back after a month. And it only cost us $5 a piece
Right.
to get them back. Allah gave us our vans back. And then we told them, we took counsel with them. They told us that what we would have to do was drive those vans back to Costa Rica.
Right.
Okay, and they agreed they would fly up. And we put the names in the van name, vans in their names as Panamanians. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then we drove back from Costa Rica. We stayed up there for about a week in a trailer park. And we came back, went to lawyers and got everything legal. They flew up, signed everything.
At the border.
Mm-hmm. And then we drove back to Panama. And when we got to the border of Panama, they wouldn't let us in. There was a little glitch or something over there. And so we sat there, circled the vans, started cooking Navy beans, the sisters washing and everything, and set up camp. And they flew up from Panama City up to the frontier. And they came up there, and we all went in there, and they started negotiating because at the frontier, it was like an independent community.
Right.
Some people, they run things themselves. So whatever you negotiated with them, that's what you did. And they went in there and negotiated, and I don't even remember everything. I wasn't even on it. But they allowed us to drive our vans in. We had to give them a little something. I don't know what it was. We drove in there. When we filled up with gas, we drove all the way into Panama City on one tank of gas. We never done that before. That man allowed pushing us down the road, brother. And we got in there that evening, man, and them brothers took us in their homes and stuff and put us up. And we stayed there until we sold our vans.
Well, the thing was is that there was buyers for the van. The government wanted them, but after we went through everything, then we got the money that we needed from each one of the vans that we agreed on. Then we paid everybody else because we had told them. I remember we were sitting one day and Brother Henry came and said, "Brothers, you all right? You got everything you need?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I was sitting there with my gas needle on empty. But you know, you have that little false pride. You all your life you done helped everybody else, but now you're in a position you can't help yourself. That's a humbling experience. And so Brother Henry took a $20 bill and put it in my pocket. I took a deep breath and I thanked him. He said, "No, it's all right, brother. Whenever y'all finish selling the van, you know you can give it back to me." And that gave a little bit of relief because
So now when you finally got into Costa Rica, after all those experiences, what was it like when you set foot on the land?
it was to me like I had really gone to the Garden of Eden. I call it the end of the world because you had the main river, the Limoncita, coming down, and the strip of land that we had, the 62 hectares, which was 125 acres, had a river coming around the backside up, connected in to the Limoncita River called Tigre, the Tiger. And so we equated that to the Tigris and Euphrates in the scripture. And then we built our community right on the mouth of where the two rivers met. And we built a little Islamic community there. It used to be a pig farm.
That's right.
We learned that after we had bought the place. And so we took it as we were being sent back to the beginning of the end of the time of the worlds.
So the first night, pitch dark, right? Because I remember that's the only place I ever seen the stars form a perfect circle
Right.
above my head. So I know it was pitch dark.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then drinking those frescas out of the river water.
We had purified it.
Yeah. You had to basically, it was not a whole lot of time for talking, was it? It was about work.
It was work.
The work started when I came down.
You got to plant some food,
The brothers was in town in an apartment upstairs.
but you had food growing naturally,
Three of 'em.
didn't you?
Yeah, 3 apartments upstairs. We was in Limon then. But when I came down with my family, I said, well,
Yeah. You just
I
in
had
the city.
I had a lump sum of money. And we had, in fact, I had more than enough money to take care of anything we had to do. That's how we got the pole.
Well, how long had y'all been there before?
They was there a whole year before I came.
Yeah,
down.
about
About a year and a half.
Well, we was
Yeah.
in the city. Yeah.
They was in
So it was you, Basia, and Akil.
Because see, when Manira and I went down.
And then Wally was with y'all.
They came
No,
back.
no, he came down 5 or 6 years later. He wasn't with us in the original thing, just the 4 brothers.
Okay.
So when I went down, Anira and I hopped the plane. They was in Limon. Things was tight, cause they said they had gone through all that process of getting rid of them van because I had called down, Sim called me and was telling me what they was going through it. I said, well, I'll come down and buy the vans. Give y'all some money. Sim said, don't you come nowhere near this place. So the last thing we want to do is bring any money in here.
Right.
Because these jokers sitting here, these vultures sitting in here right now, if you come with some money, so that'll mess up everything. You just stay cut, we'll get in touch with you. So after they got set up in Limon, and Sim said, you need to come on down and look around. So I called Manira. Manira told me it's okay. So we hopped plane, went down. I took a 2 weeks vacation, and Manira and I came down, and we went down there, and I went in with money to buy everything up, get them back up to status, and I stayed down there for 2 weeks. And while I was down there 2 weeks, that's when we purchased the farm.
Right.
Arturo helped us get the farm. He the one led us out there to the farm. And after we got the farm, I came on back to the States and worked there.
Was it a house on the farm? When you
Yes,
that
one
was-
house.
that
The
house
one he
I
was
was
telling
telling
you
you
about.
Yeah. The one that he was
Now,
staying
where
in.
was that house at?
It was right across the river when you walk straight in. It was right in the center.
You remember?
Now, I
y'all
don't
stayed in
remember the house. It wasn't the house I stayed in.
No, you stayed in the basement of the school.
Yeah.
Okay,
When you walked out the basement of the school and looked at the door, you looked right at my house.
right.
But the house to the left of me was the house that was built there that Sam was
Okay,
in.
okay.
Yeah.
But and behind you, up to the north, was a house that Basil had. I built him, and then behind that was Akil's house. And later, when Wally came, there was another house further up.
Further up, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I remember.
Now, when Sharkey came down and brought money, we put a house for Sam and Latif across the river on a piece of land we own over there.
Right.
And now that's
I
when
remember that.
I had perfected the house. When that house was built, they called it the Limon house. All the other houses was rough sketch, but see, I had done got it in my head. I had perfected how I wanted. So Sam told Latifah,
Well, refined.
come on, leave Rakib alone, see, because this is his baby. And it worked.
So all the houses you all basically constructed yourself.
Yeah, we did.
Everything, including the school.
We ripped the wood from the farm to build the house.
Stood the wood up in the chocolate so it would dry.
So how long? Okay, so now at the same time you had a lot of food on the land already.
Yes.
You had the plantains, the
We had-
bananas, the grapefruits,
We had to plant all that.
the oranges. You had a lot of stuff like that there already.
They were-
Chocolate bushes.
All of the
Yeah, we had
see
coffee
here,
too.
when we went out there, Kareem, the house had trees all around it growed up. The place was growed up. It had trees. Little small trees like this. The place didn't have no grass like you. It was just when we walked in there, we had to walk through a path to the house. And it was back in there, and lucky it hadn't rot because it's such a good, well-built house. Because all of that moisture come up. When you got up in the morning, it took your breath. You couldn't just come outdoors in the morning because them trees was kicking off so much oxygen. So we went in there and started cutting down trees and bush, cleaning. And right in front of the house that the Sim was staying in at the time, we put all of the stuff right there and we burn it. At night, we sit there and look at the big fire, burn it. And we cleaned and we cleaned and we chopped and we cleaned till we cleaned. And then back up there was a coconut orchard. We cleaned that over a time. And then, after we got everything clean, and the sisters were still in Limon, we were going back and forth. And then if we got it cleaned up, Sam said, let's get some paint and paint this place. So we went out and bought paint, come in. All this was done by horseback, because we bought us 2 horses. And we brought all that stuff in and started shipping food and everything in, back in there slowly, till we got everything stacked up like we wanted. We built our own stores and everything in there. And then we painted the place and got it ready so we could bring the sisters out. We went in and packed up, shut the place down in Limon in there, and took all of the sisters. And each brother had a room, which is his house.
10 by 10.
10 by 10. His family in. In the morning, his room was where the kitchen was. He fold up, we cook. At night, they fold down, he sleep. And then I said, well, we got that lumber ready, and I done went out there and then scoped everybody's house. I was crawling around people saying, I'm up under the house looking. Because all I want to do is see it. Once I see it, that's it. I can duplicate it.
Yeah. Now, was ready to get out the city.
When I went back out there, I duplicated and I put my house up.
Yeah, that was the first one.
First house. And so I remember saying, well, you came down with the money, brother. You put your house up first. Okay. I put my house up. And then we put Basia's house up next.
Basia had more children.
Because the kid was staying in the house with me. And so then we finally built a kid a house. Kid had more children, so we built him a big one. But Natifa couldn't deal with that big house because we had it when we first built. We built a section of it, just 2 rooms to the side. The next side is kitchen, and had another section out there like open to. We got some more lumber together, and we sealed it off. And Natifa said, I ain't used to no big house like this. But when them children kept coming, she said, well, we got to make more room. So we had those houses, and then we had our community staff. So then we had to build a school.
Right.
And that's when I had the idea I wanted to build me upstairs, downstairs.
Right.
And we put an upstairs, downstairs school. School upstairs and downstairs was for storage and anybody wanted to come and stay, including the brothers from the east come out there and stay with us.
Right.
They stayed in the bottom of the place and ate just like we ate.
Now, what did you grow?
We grew bananas.
Well, I knew bananas was already there naturally,
No.
right?
No.
The planters and the bananas and the grapefruit and the orange, they weren't there. The lemons,
Grapefruit and oranges, limes was there.
Okay.
But the trees had to be clean so the sun could get to them.
Oh, okay.
If you don't let the sun to them, it wasn't gonna produce.
Okay.
And the coconut orchards had to be clean. But the bananas, we went to the neighbors and got the beets. And we planted them. And they taught us, the Blondon taught us how to plant the stuff,
Right.
how to keep it clean. And once we caught on to that, and I found out banana takes a year to come off, I had calculated that thing, how to plant ahead of time, so they kept coming off all the time. And we had so much stuff growing, I had so much stuff growing, I'm a nut when I go to growing food. And then mom and them come down, and they was coming, and they brought me some okra seeds, some stuff in there. And then we had a tree called an okra tree.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was a big seed, and you plant it, and that thing grow up, and that tree would get back, and he'd get up, and he'd just keep getting, and the okra just come all year round. And when the tree about to go out, just go out there and prune the tree up and his sprout, new sprouts start to give you okras, just constantly okra. And we plant papayas year round, takiski, and the calabasa. We had a lot of calabasas of pumpkin. We could eat it tender green, or we could let it grow and fill out like a regular pumpkin. But it wasn't a pumpkin, more like a butternut squash. Right. We had that kind of stuff growing year round, year round. Yeah, we had everything growing year round, year round. Kept them the pastures chopped so the cows had green grass year round. Horses had green grass year round. Everything.
The river over there was an area over there up and it was flat. I mean, it was rich, bro. So we went over there and we cleaned all that up. Picked up all the sticks and everything. And we were blessed to buy a tiller plot.
Yep.
And we plant over there, brother. We plant tomatoes. We plant what? Cabbage,
string bean,
okra, string bean, rice. But we plant rice over there, man. You can't plant no rice over like that. We plant beautiful rice, man. I mean, it was laid out, bro. When people came down there, looked like something you see in a picture book. Cucumbers.
Yep.
We had it all, bro.
Blondon, he had never heard talking nothing growing. They always grew that on the Pacific side.
You know, so you can't
Blondon said, you can't grow that over there. It's too rich. You can't do that. No. And Blondon come on, I carried him tomatoes like that. Big old pretty red tomatoes. Him and his wife and his children was eating all. We had a whole bucket full of them. And Blondon just shook his head. But what took him off when I grew him cabbage, man. 8-pound cabbage. 8 pounds. I said, this one go to Barcia, he the biggest. And Wally took it to him. Barcia put on, because Barcia had the scales hanging on his pole. He put it on out across the river. He put on, he always says, 8 pounds. I said, well, you got that one, brother. You the largest, so you eat that one. All the rest of them was right behind him. And Barcia sat on and gave a big old laugh. Boy, Jahara, she went and cut that sucker up and cooked. We had steamed cabbage. Everybody had steamed cabbage and stuff. I go out and I start, they come over, they get the sacks and I have stuff this. Man, I tell you, we just ate good, man, lived good. The children played. We had 7 horses. And the children, that's what they was taught. They ride horses and go down and play with the young calves. Every calf had a name. And it was tame. We got up to 50 cows. He said, man, we got to get rid of some of these young bulls and stuff, man, because they eating up the grass. So we couldn't have enough for travel for them. So Brother Campbell came in with his truck one Sunday and backed up and we loaded up everything we didn't need. He said, well, brother, when y'all come in, you can get some money. He loaded up and left. I know what I owe you. We didn't worry about it. He said, when y'all come in 2 weeks later, we went, brother went in, he paid him. He said, go out here, you don't need no money, you got everything.
And so, when by the time 85 got here, the power forever and last, this is power forever. And I think it was the power forever and power at last and forever. And they came out with the products and stuff to try to have an independent economy system developed. And Allah cut all my income off. I used to make furniture. I used stuff like this. We call them roperos. And I used to make all these kind of things here, doors, sinks, and I used to make 72-inch kitchen sinks and put them in that design and stuff, and then put them on my truck and bring them and put them into the locations where I was making them for and fit them right in there. I just do all those things. And but when my time ran out, he didn't want me to make money like that because that wasn't the reason I left America to go to Panama. I went to Panama to set up the program for the nation to be able to help the believers when this time comes that we're coming into to escape. Because we sent him to airplane pilot school. He learned to fly, but he didn't get a chance to take the test. Our goal was to get him qualified to fly twin-engine plane, which I think you could carry up between 30 and 50 people on a twin double-engine plane. And the one that we wanted him to learn how to fly. And so our goal was to build facilities like what he was talking about, because our next goal was to build 6 12 by 12 rooms with 6 12 by 12 rooms on the top, like a small mini hotel, that when people like yourself, Shaquille and the rest of them, when they came, you would have at least 2 large rooms that you and your family could make the transition in. And then we was already preparing to be able to cut out a piece of land and give you your own land to build your house on. And then we would develop our community, and then we're going to start co-oping with other people in other little towns that wanted to do business with us, and then we could, make the transition without too much pain for change. But Allah cut it all off. He didn't let that go through. And so when he did, after 10 years, I had to look again back at the history and the time of what must be done, because and we were one of the first to buy a free and clear title in that whole area where we were at.
That's right.
And so we started establishing new precedents with why you should have your own title. And so when we got to that point, we filed this Declaration of Independence. I think we had about 203 signatures to ratify. But it's still in place. I think we still got the records of it. But I had to come back because I had to come and assist Minister Farrakhan in the work that he had to do, because Allah didn't give him this work by himself. And so when I came back, I didn't come back looking. The only 2 houses that had that national in it was your house and Cayum. And so I knew where to start back from, because I remember when Allah gave you the first name, Momin, the believer. And then you dealt with some other name, like Kareem, and then you took the name Kareem Allah. So that verified to me that the spirit that I was receiving from the teachers in the program of the Nation of Islam came from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, because he left you here to give me what I needed as the messenger.
There were many other brothers that I could have interviewed, but they were just not available. They were just not available. Many people were attracted to the Nation of Islam in the 60s, late 60s, going into the 70s, early 70s. I would say from 70 to 74, the Nation of Islam exploded in the city of Winston-Salem. And there were many people who were seeking the knowledge, seeking to learn everything they could learn about the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. But I was not able to locate everybody. Like I said, when Muhammad Muhammad took over and he started leading the nation in another direction, people scattered. And so I was just fortunate enough to locate the people that I was able to locate and talk with them. And I'm thankful for that. So we'll get into that and then we'll close it out. We're in a time period where we are basically functioning with the Holy Quran. So I'd like to share something with you out of the Holy Quran. Every nation has a messenger sent to them with a revelation. And the revelation is sent to that nation to help them become a better people from that point in time. Whatever is revealed to them fits the requirements that are necessary for them to become a better people. And it also reveals more of the unseen. 1960, when Islam was beginning to really take a hold, this is when the sit-in movement started, the civil rights movement. Okay, this is the beginning of another messenger, his idea. Now, I'm going to say something. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said he was a messenger to the black nation. I'm going to say Martin Luther King, the Honorable Martin Luther King Jr. was a messenger to the white nation, because we often heard that we were a nation within a nation. But the Honorable Martin Luther King Jr., the message that he delivered to the white community was a powerful message. It was one of nonviolence, equal opportunity, equal rights, treat people based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Get over your racism. This is something that is going to cause you to perish if you don't get over your racism. This is going to create a race war. So the message that he was delivering, he had a lot of people following him as well, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a lot of people following him with the do for self attitude. So now, when Alex Haley was writing for Reader's Digest, I don't know what year it was, but one Reader's Digest, he featured the work of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he said the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the most powerful black man in America, probably in the Northern Hemisphere. And next thing you know, you see another writing saying the hate that hate produced and that kind of thing. So the civil rights movement is beginning to get feel the competition coming. Now both of these are happening in the same nation, the same United States of America, but because it's a nation within a nation, the black people, the black nation had its messenger, and the white nation had its messenger. Now both messengers were black. The Honorable Martin Luther King Jr., he delivered a revelation to white people that they had to honor. He said to them, if you don't stop this racism, we're all going to perish. We're all going to perish. And he espoused nonviolence, and he gave his own life to prove the point that violence will not solve anything. Even though today, the white people still believe that violence will solve everything. But anyway, they did accept enough of the revelation to bring into being the integrated society that we have today. I mean, no longer do black people have to eat at black restaurants. We can eat anywhere we want to eat now, anywhere we can afford to eat. Okay. We have a president, we have a black president who is the product of an offspring of a white mother and a black African father from Nigeria. And remember now, before integration, there were laws where a black man could not marry a white woman, and a white man could not marry a black woman. But with the revelation of Dr. Martin Luther King and all the people that espoused his idea and worked toward his idea, those laws have been eliminated. So now today, we have a lot of children who are offspring of mixed marriages. And this is the dream of Martin Luther King, and this is the result of the revelation that he brought to the white community. You have to stop this racism or else you're going to perish. And there were those who were wise enough to see the revelation that he was bringing, and so they worked toward that. Now, the Nation of Islam offered a lot of competition to that idea, and it caused a lot of very successful black people to say a lot of things. I know if they were still alive, they'd probably take them back. But one I never forget was Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice. He was speaking to a crowd of students, a group of students at Princeton University in 1959, and he was asked about his thoughts about the Nation of Islam. And he called the Nation of Islam a bunch of thugs that came out of prisons and jails and that was supported by Arab groups. Okay. So him being a graduate of Lincoln University, and then he went to law school at Howard University, I guess that had some impact on a lot of people. It had a pretty good impact. It didn't impact me because I had never heard of the Nation of Islam. I was in New York. It's a funny thing. I tell people all the time. I went to New York, D.C., Detroit, constantly. I went to Detroit a lot. Stayed in Detroit. Was in Detroit during the riot, 1967. Was up in Atlantic City, New Jersey every summer. Was in New York a lot. Was in D.C. all the time because my uncle worked at Howard University. Never heard the word Islam. Never heard the word Muslim. I never heard any of it until I was 20 years old. No, I was older than that. I was 20, let's see, I was 23, 24 years old before I heard the word Islam, Muslim, or the Nation of Islam. And I heard it in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I heard it at home. And so I'm thankful to the brothers that I interviewed in the first part of the documentary for just holding up the sign as long as they held up the sign, as long as they did, because had they not made a sign of the presence of the Nation of Islam, I might not have ever heard it. Because I was everywhere where it existed, but I wasn't around it. My longitude and latitude was not there. You know, my longitude and latitude was going by it all the time. So that is, that's something that I am thankful for. But anyway, considering all of that, these two revelations were running parallel, and they were running sort of opposite each other, against each other, so to speak, but they never did touch. But they were creating such a magnetic wave of energy in the black community as well as in the United States of America that we have the day that we have today. This is a very beautiful day from Allah, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. And we're free today, as he also said. You know, and that's all you ever wanted was your freedom. That's all we should have ever wanted was our freedom. You're free to go for self today. you know. He can't hold you a slave anymore. You're holding yourself a slave, as he said. And they will realize that history does repeat itself because, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in the early 18th century, 19th century, beginning in the early 1800s, black people were escaping slavery that existed in the South and migrating to the North, and their population was increasing so rapidly that white people wanted to initiate a movement to enable the Africans, the blacks, former black slaves or Africans, to leave the United States because they were in fear of what this freedom of these former slaves could cause in America. And believe me, during that early part of the 19th century, you know, going from say maybe 1819 to 1830, 35, there were a lot of riots in the United States of America. And there was a lot of death and destruction. And so there were a lot of white people who believed that the best thing to do was to separate the black man from America. But there was a great resistance to that from black people. And then there was a period of time in the 19th century where they called the Great Awakening, where the white man got a lot of religion. And the reason he got religion is because most of the black people that he had freed, they were Muslims. And so they quickly wanted to convert them to Christianity. But as a result of converting them to Christianity, they still tried to establish a colonization movement which would move them out of the country back into a country that they founded called Liberia. And that was successful for a minute. And to this day, the country of Liberia still exists. But the black people put up a great resistance to separation back then. So separation is nothing new. It's just that in our time, in this community, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, there were those who came into the knowledge of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad who grabbed hold to this idea again and tried it again. And though we didn't arrive at the results that we wanted to arrive at, we still were made a better people and a more successful people. Now, share some of my background with you as I asked all the other participants in this documentary. My father's side of the family, they were educators. My grandparents were in the foundation of what is unaccredited now, but at one time was an accredited black college called Knoxville College in Knoxville, Tennessee. My father and all of his siblings attended Knoxville Academy as all the way up to Knoxville College. When I accepted the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and acknowledged to my father that I was very attracted to the Nation of Islam, he then acknowledged to me that he was very familiar with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he didn't have any problems with those teachings. And he just told me to watch the brothers. Now, it took me a long time to understand what he was saying, but I got it. Okay. Now, later in my history, my journey in the Nation of Islam, I learned that my mother's father, he had been dead 30 years when I found this out, 30 or 40 years, I don't know. He died in 1959. So this was 1993 when my grandmother revealed this to me. So this was 34 years. I left a flag, the Star and Crescent flag, in my grandmother's home in Johnson City, Tennessee. And mind you, Johnson City, Tennessee has never had any more than 1 or 2% black population. And my mother was born there, I was born there, my grandmother was born there, and my grandfather was born there. And all of their parents were born there. And they were born of free people because in the mountains of Tennessee wasn't too much slavery up in the mountains because you really couldn't, it was too difficult to have slaves in the mountains. So most of my folks on my mother's side they were born free. Now on my father's side, they come out of Mississippi and Alabama, so they had it pretty rough. But anyway, my grandmother, I left my flag over there, Star and Crescent flag, and I forgot I left it over there. So in 1993, I was visiting my grandmother, and she went in the closet and she got my flag. It was already in a frame and everything. It was one that was made for me by a sister, and the material she used was silk. And my grandmother said to me, she said, "Did Brother Farad give you this?" And I asked her, I said, "Well, what do you know about that?" She said, "Well, he caused the ruckus in the 20s. I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, everybody, all the black people were talking about this white-looking man going around teaching that the white man was the devil. And he was teaching this to black people. Your grandfather heard about it and heard he was going to be in Cleveland, Ohio in 1929. So your grandfather had to go to Cleveland, Ohio to see this man." I said, "Well, how did it impact him?" My grandmother told me, she said, "Have you ever read the story of the lion that was raised by the lambs because he had got lost from his mother?" I said, "Yeah, I think I've read a story like that." She said, "Well, that's what it was like." You see, your grandfather really got a good picture of himself when he went to see Brother Farad, because hearing him attracted him so much that he had to go see him to verify something. She said, "I don't know what it was, but it was almost like he was looking into a mirror." But she said he returned and he was a different man and he just became even more successful. I said, "Wow." Okay. Growing up around these men, uncles, everybody familiar with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. My grandfather familiar with Master Farad Muhammad, even though I wasn't but 12 years old. But they never said anything to me about any of these people. But I was just totally impressed and enamored by all the men in my family because of the way they carried themselves. They carried themselves like they were people of authority. And white people did not intimidate any of the men in my family. My father, my uncles, my aunts, my grandmother. Now, over in Johnson City, my grandfather was well respected. My grandmother was well respected by white people and black people. And black people only made up 1% of the total population of the town. So I was really blessed in that regard. That's how, I wasn't pushed in that direction. They just conducted themselves in such a way that when I heard Islam, and like I said, I came home I've always been inspired to do something for myself because of my grandfather, my mother's father. He just, he was a self-employed black man. And even though I wasn't any more than 12 years old when he died, I still had enough time with him to really be inspired by him. So when I came home, I graduate from college, to finish my senior year in college. I started a newspaper called The Other Side. I was doing business with Muslim brothers. And I didn't know that they were Muslims. I had never heard the word Islam. I had been to D.C., New York. I had cousins in New York that I had been visiting ever since 61, 62. I had an uncle in D.C. that I had been visiting ever since 1957. And then I was in Detroit in 1967 during the riot. I had never heard the word Islam, Muslim, or the Nation of Islam, or heard of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I was around all of it everywhere I went. Or Malcolm X, and never heard of any of them. The first Muslim I ever heard of was Muhammad Ali, but I didn't know he was a Muslim. I didn't think about him being a Muslim. It didn't move me at all. I had to go see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to get inspired. Because prior to that, my inspiration was my grandfather and my uncles and my daddy. So when I went to see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that was the only inspirational force outside of my family that I had ever had. And that was Savior's Day 1974, and he inspired me to read the Holy Quran. So I am beginning to embrace Islam, because prior to that, I wasn't thinking about the religion Islam. I was following the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I wasn't thinking about the religion Islam. And so when Waradim Muhammad came in and he changed the direction, I think the falling away took place, and I'm just speaking for myself now. I just didn't appreciate all the aspersion that was cast upon the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Farad Muhammad. If he had come in and said that he wanted to take us in the Holy Quran and this is where we're going now, and had nothing to say about his father and Master Farad Muhammad, I probably would have rolled right with him. But he just didn't do it that way. So, and I'm not going to say that's the reason a lot of people fell away. But where I was in Atlanta, Georgia, a lot of people fell away because of that. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoys this documentary. And may Allah bless each and every one of you with only the peace that he gives, the peace of mind. So I'm going to say, Assalamu alaikum.